Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you present here. I'm Katrien van Marsenille. I'm Marketing Director at VeryPark. I myself am based in Belgium, and I would like to thank you all for being here. So as you all know and experience, the past year has been quite challenging for everyone. And there has never been a more important period for banks to embrace digital transformation. This webinar will give you insights in how you can respond to transformations in the banking landscape while keeping up with the rise of digital giants and of course with your customers who are always on the move as well. So I would like to welcome our speakers first. We have Christophe Usureau. He's Research Vice President, Banking and Investment Services at Gartner. He's based in Singapore, so he knows your challenges and your situation very well. Good afternoon, Christophe. I'm really looking forward to hear your insights. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Then we have Taylor Chia, who is Director of Engagement at VeryPark. He's based in Malaysia, so also in your region. He will briefly introduce VeryPark and show how our digital banking solutions allow banks to align their digital strategy to their customer strategy by enabling customers to move seamlessly from physical to digital channels in a true omni-channel approach. Welcome, Taylor. We'll hear you after Christophe's keynotes. And then we also have Syed Adil Ali, who is a senior solution consultant pre-sales at VeryPark. He's based in India, and he's joining us to help us answer questions at the end of the webinar. So welcome, Syed.
Thank you. Thank you, Katrien. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's a great pleasure to have all of you here. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Christophe Usureau for the first presentation.
Welcome to this session. Thanks for listening to what we have to say. We think it's very important to take a step back and start to look at some of the important changes that's happening in our industry. And most importantly, how do we start to react to those changes? So to achieve this, we're going to have a session looking at different elements, looking at examples from the APAC marketplace, as well as some other like geographies, and try to use some framework to help you to make sense of those important changes. But it's always a good idea to remind ourselves what have been some of the key dynamics in our markets. And one important one which we had to consider is, well, unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the health crisis, but it was also a trend which was there before, we have digital accelerations. And we start to see a breaking down of a physical digital divide. So what does it mean in practical terms? Well, it means like we're starting to see some new environments we have to deal with. You've seen maybe like a lot of younger people or yourself, you start to use digital platform such as Fortnite, for example, to be able to attend some concerts because you cannot go to a physical one. And that's important to consider because there are new interactions, there are new exchange of value, and so on. We also started to see concepts like decentralized land, which, as you've probably seen with non-fungible tokens representing art, what's happening is in decentralized land, they're starting to create new digital assets where you see land, virtual land, being represented by a token, a non-fungible token or NFT, but also art pieces also represented by non-fungible tokens. And that starts to create new engagement model for your customers, but also new digital assets. So a lot of changes in the environment. We're going to have to be more agile, more flexible to actually deal with those new environments. We also have to deal with new customers. We are going to see a rise in autonomous vehicles, and that also implies new interface. And you may have seen Brick in the US. They created an advertising where they say it's not a brick, it's an Alexa. So we are kind of a blurring of the line, so to speak. But that starts to be a bit of an issue because now you can use Alexa as a way to locate a petrol station from ExxonMobil, and you can use Alexa to pay for gas. So how far can it go? We also need to take into account Internet of Things, new connected devices. So for example, 3M on that bottom right picture, when you have a filter that needs to be replaced, it will automatically order a new one. It's actually using an API from, again, Amazon. So why banks should not be present into that? We should have services which are embedded into those new environments and serving those new customers. And that starts to be more and more urgent, to say the least, when we have to take into account new consumption models. Some is about the data of your customers. You start to see companies like Amazon actually rewarding your customers to share their own receipt, physical receipt, with them, so they can get more data. We also see a rise in group purchases, especially in Asia. Pinduoduo is not the only one, but it's one of the most dynamic one in the market. And they enable your customers to combine their purchasing power to benefit from better deal, especially from a digital commerce perspective. And finally, we also have to account some new monetary value. Those are still early stage. We've seen the strong pressure that Facebook and the support of the Libra Association, now called DM, has triggered a lot of activity from central banks from a global perspective. In China, has been a good progress with the digital yuan. Those have to be taken into account because it will change the payments relationship and could also be taken into account by digital giants. So, taking into account those different types of new environment, new customers, what we decided to do is actually to use this simple agenda to help you to think differently about your response. So we will first look at the new digital financial services ecosystem. Here, I will use example of Southeast Asia and the dynamic of that market to really illustrate what are those new templates that digital giants are using and how can you actually be part of those changes? How can you respond? In the second part, we spend a bit more time looking at super apps. The idea is to understand what they are really, but also as a financial service providers, what should I do? So what? And finally, as we previously mentioned, we have to pay much more attention to the concept of data monetizations, the value of data. So we introduce some ideas and some framework to help you to think about how to organize your response using your customers' data with, of course, the consent of your customers. So let's start. So the new digital financial services ecosystems. Let me introduce a simple framework to go through that exercise. A framework we have created with our clients and for clients, of course. What we've done is what we are very interested in is to look at the evolutions in terms of different services from digital commerce to how through payments, the distribution of financial products and services, and the supply of current accounts, how can you start to provide financial advice? How can you be closer to the customer trust? So we make an assumption as we go through those different layers of product and services, we get closer to customer trust. The second part is we look at the different types of relationship here. We look at partnership, investment relationship, and also product relationship. Basically, we're going to do a mapping of the marketplace. It's important to stress that we're not going to be that exhaustive. We're not going to look at every single relationship, especially in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asian market is very rich in terms of competitive and collaborative dynamics. And that's also why it's important to use it as an example. But also mean it's a very expansive market. So let's start by a look at some of those investment relationships and why they're important. We're going to look at different types of ecosystem, Gojek, Grab, Mint, so very much the Philippines, and Ant Group, but mostly Ant Group and their presence in Southeast Asia, not in China. What is interesting is there are relationships between the different providers in terms of investments, and those are very important to understand. One of the most recent one, and transformational, is the possible merger, pending merger, I should say, between Gojek and Tokopedia Group. And that could generate the group GoTo. And that possible merger is very interesting because there were already some collaboration, or possible increase in collaboration between Facebook and Gojek. But that merger may challenge that type of collaborations. We have to be conscious about those investment relationships as part of our mapping. We also look, and we come back to that one because it's a very interesting one to learn from those new dynamics, relationship between Gojek and Jago. Gojek made investment into digital bank Jago in Indonesia. And that's an interesting one to look at how to plan the response. But let's move to another degree of relationship here. Let's look at the product relationship to that extent. Those are quite important to take into account because you can start to see some template emerging. If you look at the traditional way, like Ant groups are being building, they are like impact of a marketplace. They have been very good at supporting digital commerce, mostly in the Chinese markets. They've been very good at collecting and generating new credit data, an alternative credit records, and build trust with payment services in order to supply more financial products and services. That's exactly that same template that is being applied by Gojek, Grab, and Mint. Gojek and Grab, obviously, as you are aware, have been very good at creating a ride-hailing service for motorbike and car in the different markets, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, and expanding from that. They've been very good at plugging in digital commerce and new requirements for online ordering for customers. They've equipped both their merchants, their customers on the retail and the commercial side with wallets, and have been able to use that data to start to create some new financial organizations, being from GrabPay to Grab Financials, in the case of Grab, from Gojek to GoPay to actually Decatalyst for financial innovations, and Mint as a kind of financial holding for Gcash, the digital wallet, and Fuse Lending as the credit record or data-centric subsidiaries. And from there, they are now able to actually expand into financial products and services, supporting investments, Grab Invest, and also like invest money from Gcash, and also supporting like new services as well across insurance and investments for all those different players. So the important thing here is they've been very good at building on that data centricity to build customer trust. And from there, in certain cases, they're now getting into digital banking. Grab obtained the digital banking license with Singtel in Singapore, and now they're able to expand the range of products and services they provide, and also serve both retail and small and medium businesses. And Group is also very interesting because they obtained a wholesale license in Singapore. And clearly, they have a strong understanding how to support the digital commerce, digital payment, and cash management services of small medium businesses. And that's not a Singapore play. That's a pan-Southeast Asian play. So that's why we have to look at those mapping and understand not only the product and services that those providers are delivering, but also the sequence and how they're organizing themselves and different components of that strategy. What we're missing here, I would say, is actually quite the most important to a certain extent, is the next stage. How do we connect those different relationships, different types of partnership? There are quite a few of those, and I didn't want to overburden or already overburden charts or diagram here, but you can see some interesting one. And we're going to explore those in more details because I will argue that one of the strategic requirements that will advise you to take on board is actually to create those maps and start to see which one could we work with. And let's say what happens if the merger, let's say between Tokopedia and Gojek, is fully formalized. What happened to existing partnerships? What are the new possible partnerships? You have to have a dynamic approach in mind when you think about digital financial services ecosystem. So now let's look a bit more at some of those partnerships and the implications for your organizations. What I've done here, and I will do this across the 3 sections that we're using today, is we go through some recommendations, and you will have the slide anyway, so you can also look at those at your own leisure, and look at an example on the right to actually document a little bit what it means by that. But one thing we think is quite important is to think in terms, how do I align to those digital financial services ecosystem? Can I reuse what they have? And can I supply something as part of their customer engagement? And if I do this, as you can see for recommendation on the left, I have to have this data-centric view. If you look at DBS Payla from DBS in Singapore, what's interesting is they started to do that for quite some time now, but they recently integrated with Gojek. So now you can actually organize your ride for Gojek as part of your Payla application, which was initially a mobile P2P solution, but increasingly it'll start to look more like a super app. So you have to think about, how do I embed some of those new environments? And the main reason for doing this is you want to be able to access the context. You want to be able to be in a position where you understand the context of the specific transactions that your customers are making. The reason to do those partnerships is not just defensive. It's very much, I need to understand the why. Why are my customers using specific payment solution? Why are they using my insurance, my investment, my lending services? And to get that context, you need to embed other partners' environments into your own. But you could also actually start to embed your own product and services or capability into those new environments. You could follow the customer. Bank Jago in Indonesia is a bit peculiar because basically it's a bank where you had investment from Gojek in the first place. So there is already a certain level of integration. But what is interesting with Bank Jago is now they enable the customers from Gojek, or I should say the plan is to enable customer for Gojek to open an account as part of the Gojek environment, open an account with Bank Jago. We start to use Gojek as a distribution platform, a marketing platform, but also making sure they're fully integrated with the SMBs, which are using Gojek quite extensively. So as you can see, you have to embed in, but you can also embed out from that perspective. And that's, it's not a session on open financial services as such, but clearly with open banking, that kind of strategy becomes more and more urgent. Now, taking that into account, we have to look at what's the impact of Super App on those new collaborative models. And Super App are quite interesting. They've been used at all different sources, so to speak. There are a lot of super apps which have been there for some time. So clearly super apps are not new. Let's be clear. And Alipay and WeChat Pay clearly have demonstrated the value of creating very strong interface and supporting their customers across many different types of functionality and applications, from digital commerce, social media, financial services, and so on, and beyond. The interesting is we've started to see more competition among super apps, from some of the mobile or digital wallet, increasing their capability, again, thanks to the data they were able to collect. And we also saw those new kids on the block, but not so new anymore, Grab and Gojek. And as I showed you in the previous section, clearly they are able to support a higher percentage of customers' financial services portfolio. And now we started to see banks which are creating some sort of super app. They may not call them super app, but if you look at DBS and so evolving, it's clearly looking more and more like a super app. We also have ICICI Mobile Pay, and ICICI applications, as we'll look a bit more details later in this section, is actually doing exactly what I mentioned before, is creating services, functionality, in order to be able to capture the specific context of a customer's decision to use a specific products or services. And the last thing I want to mention about the definition here is a lot of companies, and we saw PayPal as an example, say, well, we want to become a super app, or we have a super app. But if you look at PayPal today, especially from an Asia-Pac perspective, the type of products and services they provide are very narrow to some extent. So it doesn't fit with that discussion definition of what is a super app. So some consideration here. No, that's all very nice, but that's not the most important part. When we think about super app, we also need to look at what are we trying to achieve here. So it's not just, and that's very important, it's not just to be able to distribute a large number of functionality. To an extent, that's easy to copy. Any company that is able to build trust, even if let's recognize that's difficult, any company that's able to achieve minimum level of trust will be able to copy the functionality from other providers. So the breadth of functionality is not necessarily the end game here. What we need to is better integrations, and again, supporting this embed in, embed out that I talked about before. I'm using a very simple model here, which we've been using with clients for quite some time to discuss the concept of super app. We look at functionality from a payments perspective, and by payments, of course, it includes origination and transfer, but not only. That's also including how do you prepare the payments, the funding of the payments. That's very important, not just how to make the payments. Loyalty, of course, is important. How do I support customer reward? But not only. How do I help them to manage the reward? How do I help them to create new combination of rewards? Source new rewards. So new economic model. And most importantly, we also need to pay attention to the management of the credentials, security, data, and so on. Ability to support the specific money and transactions. And of course, dealing with the context, understanding the context. So if we take this into account, let's look at some example. There we go. So if we take this into account, what we can see is we have an ability to, let me get back my pen, perfect. So we have an ability to start to look at new combinations. So what I've done here, again, providing you with quite a large number of examples of companies that are supporting pretty well the specific functionality or domain that we mentioned in that model. But what you need to do if you want to be successful here in terms of not necessarily creating a super app, but being able to deliver and support your customers, you have to start to think about combination. So there's two important points here. One is combination. So if you look at Pinduoduo, so that group purchase solutions, it's very good for funding. So the idea here, we will advertise that in the next 2 hours, if let's say you can manage to group like 15 or 20 of your friends or family, then you can do a group purchase and you will be able to get like 20% discount on that, let's say, new flat TV screen, that kind of thing. What's interesting now is how it combined with WeChat Pay. So clearly your banks could do both. You start to work with some of your cash management or corporate clients, retailers, and you start to provide that type of capabilities. And the same way as they did with WeChat, what we did with WeChat in that case is very much being able to say, okay, now we can use WeChat Pay as a way to organize the payments, as a way to improve the alignment of the different customers to make that group purchase. But you can see that this simple example, it's what's happening from an ecosystem perspective. And that's what you have to recreate as part of the digital functionality you're providing. And the second point, which I mentioned, but I need to stress even further here, is the fact that, as I mentioned, you don't have to supply or to deliver a super app, but you may have, or you probably have to deliver super app functionality. And it's not the same thing. You could argue that some of the mobile banking or mobile P2P solution, like we saw with DBS Payla, they're not positioned as super app, but they're increasingly providing super app functionality. At the end of the day, super app is a term we use in the industry. Most customers do not care. What they care about is how you're going to help me to better understand my context, help me to provide me some better funding, support my payments, and support after like a ability of my security, help me to better manage my money, and improve my reward and maximize my reward. That's what customers are looking for. So before you look at super app, think about that kind of model. How do you actually think what kind of super app functionality you can bring to market? Now, let's do the same thing. Let's do a little bit of a kind of a recommendation and so on, what we call a digital financial services strategy lens. So a couple of recommendations here. And I think they are like common sense, but unfortunately, they've not always been respected. One is we have to think about the customer's point of views, meaning that it's not because you have a lot of products you would like to deliver. It's not because you want to promote your lending products, but you should over-focus on lending, for example. You have to create a good balance between different types of functionality, according to the point of view of your customers. Again, I keep repeating that one because, well, we think it's important. You have to think of embed in and embed out functionality. You don't have to create everything yourself, especially if you want to deliver some super app functionality. There are already a lot of available resources out there. And as open banking like progress, that become more and more like obvious or easier, I would say. So another thing which I want to stress, and let me use the example here of ICICI High Mobile Pay, which is positioned as mobile payments, kind of a digital wallet. But when you look at the different functionality they offer across those different contexts, again, like and so on, you have transport, mobility, and so on. And of course, some traditional payments, products, financial services, and so on. This is more than just payments. This is more like towards the concept of super app without necessarily calling it a super app. So what is interesting here is the next stage is, or I should say, the stage which always have to be there. You have to carry on and perform a risk analysis. What we mean by this is maybe, and I'm using ICICI just as an example here, we will have some partnership with some companies like to improve ride hailing, for example. But at one point, they may have a bit of an issue with like that partnerships. Either it doesn't deliver sufficiently, or there's a risk that maybe that partner is collecting more and more data. Or maybe you partner with Gojek, and Gojek now is merging Tokopedia, create a go-to group, and now a go-to group is the threat for you. So you have to create KPIs to review that risk analysis of those collaborative options. It's not a one-time effort. That mapping we discussed, you have to do it very regularly as you update and create those new super app functionality. That's very important. Let me carry on this. So clearly, I'm quite pleased to see the result in terms of the engagement with data that you have. And let's drill down a bit more, because those were a generic category and we need to do more with data. And first, something which I'm going to mention briefly, because that's more to reassure all of us, but clearly the banks have a strong role to play. I would say banks, financial services provider, but I would say especially the banks. We have been looking at the different categories here. So as you can see from the left side, what we ask here was the customers in Australia, just to clarify. We asked them about their willingness to share some data across different categories with different providers in exchange of some benefits, of course. What is important here is very often our clients discuss with us, oh, so are customers ready to share their data? And the answer is, well, it depends. What data are we talking about? And as you can see, there are a different propensity to share data. So when you look at providing those data capability, custody services of data, as well as those negotiation capabilities some of you are providing, you have to think about a higher level of granularity. And interesting to look at those different propensity. One thing which is clear, which is reassuring, and that's data from Australia as well, is clearly from an overall data perspective, the banks, as you can see, the main bank, especially the bank with current account, is the one who is the mostly trusted from a personal data perspective, handling personal data. And of course, this could change. I mean, we discussed that you now have like this digital banking license from a GRAB perspective. You also have like Ant Financial getting a wholesale banking license. So clearly they're getting closer to that ability to actually monetize that data. But there's clearly a strong window of opportunity for established financial providers. The second thing from there is, if we carry on this one, is that's a bit of a challenge. And I think that's what we need to explore a bit more, how to move to the next stage. So even if you have built some level of trust from your customers in the way you handle their data, especially thanks to the transactional services, and of course, compliance help as well. But very interestingly here, in terms of global customers in that case, not only Australia, we can see that only 38% trust bank to make decisions on their behalf. So they actually they trust already your organization to handle their data, but is supporting the data monetization, helping them to take actions, not that much. We really need to improve that stats. To do so, there's a couple of things we need to do. Let me use some examples here. They're not from Asia-Pac, except one to that extent, because recently Standard Chartered have agreed to a partnership with a company called Doconomy, which is that company here. And what that company is doing, they are using transaction data, so it could be payment data, money transfer data, whatever, in order to calculate on behalf of the customer using AI, calculate what's the impact on the environment, what's the impact, or what's the carbon footprint, I should be saying. And they make it visible to the customer, which then can take some actions, what to do next. And we started to see more and more of those solutions. And the reason I mentioned that one here, which is in Sweden, so it's a bit further away from us, is that actually this helps us to using open banking to connect to different transaction accounts in order to be in a position to calculate that impact on the carbon footprint. And we are starting to see models which are getting more complex, like Trade.Health in that case, because what that model is doing is this company based in the UK, I should say, this fintech, they will do the same thing. So help you to calculate your impact on carbon footprint. Okay, so that's getting pretty common, but they will help you to define how much of a monthly fee do you want to pay to offset that carbon credit. That would be a very interesting economic model. So very curious to see how that will evolve. But the point of that slide is very much to look at how, when you think about helping customers to take actions, you have to be much better aligned to their specific value, their personal value. And that's, again, that's part of the context I keep talking about. That's a very important contextual data to that extent. Because most of our clients, when we talk to them, say, well, we may have sometimes a very nice, slick interface. But the most difficult part is how do we take action? How do we make customers to take actions? So aligning to the customer value is one way to do it. Another important components is to create a roadmap. So we've been using in organizations, we've been using that type of roadmap for some times. So let me introduce that roadmap and look at an example to do so. So the idea of creating a roadmap, a data journeys, is actually pretty simple. It's the idea that how do we actually increase that 38% that trust their bank to take action on their behalf? How do we move to a high level of trust for a bank or financial service provider to take actions? And to build trust, we need to combine and to create a roadmap of different data-rich services. So to do so, we use that framework. So we have the x-axis here, which is a data type service. So basically, it takes into account raw data. So raw data can be very much all the data being generated by the payment and retail a solution that your customers are using. Composite data is basically a combination of raw data with specific attributes from the customers. So that could be, for examples, like their preferences, some of the objectives, that saving objective we mentioned in the poll, that could be part of composite data. And finally, transform data. That's where you apply AI and so on to create insight from composite data, to automate some of those decisions. But that's not the most important axis. The most important one is what are we doing with that data? And here we have different types of layers, which reflect somehow the poll that we mentioned before. So let's look at an example. So I've used data from a bank, which is Starling Bank in the UK. So one which is pretty well known, like a relatively new bank, but it's been there for quite a few years now, which is profitable and has been pretty good at aligning different type of data-rich services. So some of those services are data task and goal-led. So they support specific objective, monitoring transactions, supporting a spending objective, some security objective, and so on. Exactly the question we had in the poll. Okay, so not rocket science. That's pretty a typical type of functionality that the digital banking proposition will support. Then we have conversion and fungibility. That's where you're going to transform the data and help the customers to make it more portable. In the case of Starling Bank, we use this on a marketplace. They provide, especially the SMB customer, with an ability to reuse app and services from third party, so embedded in or embedded out, depending on what they prefer. So they make the data from the SMB more portable. So they can reuse the solution from those third party, maybe to improve their cash management, and so on. So that's something which is quite interesting to that extent. And one thing that they do quite well, if we stay in that first layers, so to speak, that first dimensions, is not just to provide those services, but they're really well integrated with each other. And that's very important because much too often we saw with our customers, they have some very good data-rich service, but they're not integrated with other data-rich service. They operate in silo, which basically strongly diminish the value propositions. So you have to think about those combinations. And when you have done this, you have an ability to expand and move to the next stage. So what we have here, we have an ability to get into a deeper level of negotiations. And if I go back to when we talked about the poll before, this is the kind of ideas that we think are getting more and more important to bring to your customers. So some of them will be about to help them to reuse their data into new environments. So maybe a customer SMB is opening a new branch, a new location. Maybe they probably will have to deal with a lot of suppliers. Is there any data you can reuse to improve onboarding, but also to improve negotiations, again, to get better deals for those suppliers? We also need to help for SMB again to support like maybe a digital CFO. They don't have a CFO, they're too small. Maybe you can create like a shadow CFO, which replicates what a CFO would typically do using the data you have from that SMB. And maybe the next stage is to automate those transactions to really act like you are actually the CFO acting on behalf of SMB owner. You could be discovering supply chain opportunities. When you have those two together, you can start to think actually about like supply chain opportunities. Maybe you're actually telling them, well, you should open a new branch in that locations, and you should work with those other SMBs to create that product. Yes, we're getting further away from the traditional role of financial services providers. But as you can see, that starts to be more and more important because then you're fully part of that context, that contextual layer we are talking about. And that becomes much easier to distribute your financial products and services. Taking this into account, now let's move to some recommendations. So we make those like pretty clear, I think, in terms of a need for actually like thinking about mapping different types of data services. We discussed also like the need to align to customer objective, but that implies exactly as the second bullet mentioned here, a need to ensure that customer trust is not damaged, but abusing customer data. So being able to help customers to define their consent, to use different types of products and services, to share their data is extremely important, especially in the early stages, to build that level of trust before automating some of those data-rich services. And finally, I mentioned impact on customer trust. There's going to be some new KPIs are required. And we are fully aware that's a difficult type of discussion. How do we create those KPIs? What type of KPIs do we bring to the market? But clearly, this is going to require much more than to think about like how many products you're selling. This is going to require to think, for example, how customers using our data-rich services in new environments that help us to better understand their requirements. So we're going to have to refine the KPI. If we go back to Asia here, because some of those interesting examples are in Asia, we already discussed some of those, but a lot of activity now to actually move to that like deeper layer of data services and to move to those negotiations, which reflect the result of the poll to that extent. And we've seen recently strong activity in Australia with Combank, like creating like a new joint venture, or new venture, I should say, in order to be in a position to advise corporates and institutions about like using data about what kind of next decision they should be making and so on. So very much like a strategic tool to that extent. We've seen, of course, like the alignment with Grab and Syntel is going to be very interesting from a perspective of data-rich services. We have a micro data, micro payment kind of capabilities of like Syntel and so on, the ability to do micro billing and all the data they collect to that extent with like Grab's strong understanding of financial services. And we've seen a lot of banks starting to work like in that case with the economy, and I mentioned Standard Chartered before, looking at how do we actually align to our customer value? What's the impact of their activity on carbon footprints and also on water preservation, which they launched last week to that extent. And the final example I want to mention here is we also have to pay attention to new collaborations, even with digital giants. I mean, Marcus by Goldman Sachs is working with Amazon services. They're using the data from Amazon in order to support the lending or credit requirements of some of the Amazon marketplace owned customers. So there are a lot of those new relationships here, which are becoming more important. That's become much, much more urgent to create those roadmaps. Now, final slide. So I just wanted to briefly recap some of the elements we discussed here. We've been talking about like the need to map and prioritize partnerships. That's an exercise which is very, very important, especially I would say in Southeast Asia, because that's changing so dramatically. New partnerships are evolving, new investor relationships are evolving, and every single new one of those connectors, especially for investment side, has implications for all the other connections from a partnership perspective, product partnership. Super app, I mean, clearly super app are very interesting concept, but again, you do not have to launch a super app to participate in that market. It's all about creating super app functionality which help you to align to the context. It's not just a pretty interface. And finally, we spend a bit of time on data, revalue your customer data, work closely with them. And again, in order to build that extra level of trust, because at the end of the day, and we show some data to demonstrate this, we clearly think that the banks have an edge in terms of how they can position those services. I mean, I say banks, financial services, of course, how they can position those services and be in a position actually to create deeper customer relationship and actually benefit from the creation of new digital financial services ecosystems. So I'm going to stop now. Thank you very much for listening to these sessions. And again, you will have a slide that Catherine will share, and we have a question and answer session later on. And feel free to ask us any questions about this, hopefully very interesting topic.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us, Christophe. To the audience, if you have questions for Christophe, you can still post them in the questions pane in your sidebar, so don't hesitate to do so. He will stay with us until the end of the webinar to answer your questions. But with that, I would now like to give the word to my colleague, Taylor. So Taylor, hi again. The floor.
Hello, hi.
Is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. You see my screen?
Yes, we can. So go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Christophe, for the very insightful session. Now let us begin with the second session of today's webinar, Driving Seamless and Engaging Omnichannel Customers Journey. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to run through a couple of demos, which shows how our solution enables customers to move seamlessly between physical and digital channel depending on their own personal preference. Before I go into the demo, let me give you a quick summary of Veripark. So who is Veripark? We are a software house established way back in 1988 with 22 years of experience in the financial services industry. And we have over 700 employees based in 15 countries. We are a global player with customers spanning over 30 countries worldwide. And we are proud to say we are still actually serving our very first customer. We are dedicated to the financial services and leader in working with the Microsoft framework. Allow me to briefly provide an overview of what we have in our solution suite. Our Veripark solution suite provides an end-to-end banking platform consisting of 4 pillars which work seamlessly together. Verichannel, our first digital banking platform, is our omni-channel solution, providing the different channel capabilities from a single implementation layer. The solution entails both ready-made applications like mobile banking, internet banking, contact center banking, so on and so forth, while also having the capabilities to be leveraged as a development platform where financial institutions can build their own channels. Today, this is the solution we will be focusing today. Next up is VeriBranch. VeriBranch takes the transaction from the traditional bank role, for example, of a teller seller, and advisor, and combines them into a single unified front end. This allows them to embrace the concept of universal bankers, allowing all branch staff to have those capabilities. Moving on is VeryTouch. It's our customer acquisition, retention, and also a cross-sell pillar built on Dynamics 365, providing our servicing capabilities while working seamlessly with the channels and branch. The solution helps to serve, solve, and sell all in one place and put customer relationship management at the core of the digital transformation journey. Lastly, VeryLoan. VeryLoan is a powerful end-to-end digital loan origination, servicing, and collection. It allows managing the entire customer lifecycle in one unified CRM platform. So it covers everything from pre-screening, onboarding, risk, credit, review, underwriting, disbursement to collection. VeryLoan automates the entire retail, commercial, and corporate loan processes from start to finish. Supporting all these solutions is an integration layer named VeryLink. VeryLink provides a common interface to core system and third parties alike. It can integrate with almost any whole system which has a communication interface. Moving on to the next suite, which is VeryChannel. This is, as I mentioned earlier, this is what we are going to be demoing today. We realize as financial institutions move from a multi-channel to an omni-channel approach, VeryPark omni-channel solution contrast provide a seamless customer journey between channels, making it customer experience centric. VeryChannel is a transaction framework upon which we have built multiple customer-facing channels like mobile banking, tablet banking, online banking, and other different channels as you can see on the screen. It allows consolidation of channels, management, and building through this omni-channel layer bank can build new channels and integrate the existing channels to have one channel management application, creating seamless journey no matter what the medium. Let me now take you on the few customers' journeys that I mentioned, which is the digital onboarding journey, the payment journey, savings journey, financing journey, and also insurance. But before we do that, firstly, allow me to introduce our persona to you, John Chen, who is our hero of customer journey for today. So John Chen is a tech-savvy Malaysian who lives in Kuala Lumpur. He has friends who lives in Bangsar area, and all his social life is around there as well. He works in a white-collar job at a plaza nearby. So he wants to buy a flat, a house for himself in Kuala Lumpur area, but doesn't have enough money for a down payment. However, he is determined to follow his dream. So, will his bank help him to reach his goal? This is what we are going to find out today. Now, since we have discussed some of the features, allow me to take you to the demonstration on the onboarding journey experience. Thank you.
We will start with John onboarding himself using the mobile banking app by becoming a new customer. Before John continues, the mobile app listed down some prerequisites of what is required in order to open the account successfully, such as personal details, the documents that are required as part of the application process, and information about the account details. On the next screen, he enters his information about his mobile number and his email address, like so. He confirms his email address again. Once he sends code, there will be a 6-digit one-time password that he received by SMS on his mobile phone. To continue the onboarding process, John requires to provide some valid document. The first one among them is a passport or a national ID. And since John has his passport ready with him, he chooses passport. He needs to upload his photo by scanning it and save it into the mobile banking app. Like so. The next information that is required is his utility bill. And again, he will continue to take photo of the utility bill and upload into the system. You will keep the scan and save the image. Once these steps are completed, you will notice the solution automatically applied OCR on top of these documents that we have uploaded and use the relevant information to pre-fill the required column and create an application number for this particular process. John reviews all his information to ensure correctness before he clicks continue. Another steps that is required for this onboarding is that John is required to provide his employment details. Instead of keying in his employment details manually, he also has the options to read his business card from the mobile application. He continues by taking a photo of his business card and save it. He continues to fill in the information that is requested by the system. Lastly, he also fill in his income, monthly income, like so. He reviews the details once again before completing the onboarding journey. In the continuation, this brings him a screen where he has to do a liveness check through a selfie, as we can see now on the screen for verification. These are a series of steps that he requires to follow. Look left, look right, blink, smile, right, and look left again. So this completes the liveness detection test as required by the mobile application itself. John continues to the next process, whereby there will be an agreement that he requires to sign. He reviews the application, the agreement, and if he's satisfied, he will sign the agreement with the DocuSign capability that is built in within the system. Once he clicks finished, his onboarding journey completes. In addition to that, the system also provided some options for John whether or not he would like to apply for some banking products, such as credit card, personal loan, or auto loan. In this case, John is interested to get a credit card, and he chooses credit card for this journey. He looks at his account number, his name, and also which branch that he has his account open. And once he's happy with the verification review of his information, he's ready to register for a mobile banking access. So John continues with the application by registering his mobile banking. Here again, he's required to provide this information to create his username, his password, and a few security questions that he also has to fill in. Like so. Once all information has been filled in, he has successfully registered his mobile banking. As you're probably aware that John's new account balance is currently 0. He can now start to transfer some funds into his account by clicking and add initial funding, like so. John decided to use his debit card from another bank to fund his newly opened account by adding his card details. He fills in his card name, the card number, expiry date, and lastly, the CVV number. John decided to transfer $10,000 to his newly opened account. Once he's happy with the information that on the screen, he confirms the transfer of the fund to his newly opened account. So what we saw just now was a seamless onboarding journey completed by John on the digital channel using the mobile application, where a new account has been opened and new credit card has been requested. The mobile application provides minimal clicks during the entire process, thanks to the OCR technology and that is built within the system.
Now, let us move to the second journey to see how John can use the omni-channel solution as a payment instrument. A few months down the road, after onboarding, John has now started using his newly created bank account and is using his mobile application to pay various bills in order to manage his account. John has received a bill from the water company which he wants to pay using the mobile application. John has built this habit of using his credit card to make the bill payment because this allows him to gain loyalty points and reward points with the bank. Just before making the payment, John wants to check which credit card he should use. And in order to do that, he wants to check the available balance and the outstanding balance of his credit card. He invokes the augmented reality features that is built in within the mobile application. Note that for this demo, I will be using my own expired credit card. As you can see, the augmented reality features allows John to look at the available balance, the outstanding balance, and also his recent transaction on his credit card. John uses augmented reality capability within the mobile application. And once John has decided which card he should be using, he will proceed to the bill payment. In order to pay the bill, John goes into the bill payment section of the mobile application, which opens up the form where John has to fill in the information about the biller. Now, we don't want John to be filling in all the information manually, so he has the capability such that he can take an image of the bill and the particular bill will be scanned and OCR. Right, so once John is happy with the photo that he has taken, he will save the image. The relevant information is captured and will be auto-populated at the relevant field, so John goes ahead to continue the payment. He reviews the details and also the bill amount before he clicks continue. John confirms the details that has been populated and continue to make the bill payment. He reviews this information again and click confirm to execute the transaction. This brings us to the end of one of the payments where we saw how John can use his mobile application in order to make a bill payment through credit cards by scanning, getting card information using augmented reality, and also scanning the bill itself. A few weeks later, John goes out with his friend as the lockdown norm has eased. He goes to a coffee shop in order to socialize with his friends. It's been quite some time since John has gone out, and altogether this kind of life is a new experience for him altogether. Having coffee out with his friends, John decided to call it a day. He received a bill in order to make the payment. John sees that there is a QR code now available on the bill, which is something new from his last visit. The coffee shop owner informed that John can use the application, a mobile application, to scan the QR code and make the bill payment for themselves. This is very interesting, according to John, as he would be completing the payment without touching any surfaces or cash bill. So John uses the payment features within the application itself and select QR payment. He checks the card that he would like to pay with and continue with taking a picture of the bill itself and uploads it into the system. Once John confirms the bill receipt amount and the total amount, he confirms the application, transaction, and the 6-digit code will be sent to him as a final verification. Once this is done, a transaction reference number will be shared to John and the QR payment is now completed. In this way, we saw how the mobile application which the bank are providing to the customer can be used as a primary function financial institution, especially in case where payments are to be made, be it to the biller or different merchants which the customer could be dealing with. This now completes the payment journey conducted by John while we demonstrate the use of the mobile as a payment instrument.
Now, let us take a look and see how John uses omni-channel solution as a saving solution. John is now interested in mortgage financing, and he wants to find out what will be his monthly repayment for a mortgage loan. He accesses the banking app via his computer by selecting the finance calculator that is made available within the system. And he's presented 4 different types of finance calculators: the personal finance calculator, the mortgage finance, auto finance, and credit card calculator. Since John is interested in mortgage, he continues with the mortgage finance calculator. As you can see, John is able to provide the cost of his property and also the loan tenures as well. For this journey, John can use the slider to indicate the cost of property, or he can manually key in as well. He decided to have 250,000 as his cost of property, and his loan tenure is selected 10 years. As you can see, automatically with the conditions, the system calculated that his monthly installment will be 2,101.81 cents with the interest of 4.8. The system also shows John the total down payment that is required for his mortgage financing. With the information, John is interested to start the savings for his down payment towards the mortgage, and hence he clicks Start Saving. Since John is already a registered online banking customer, he can proceed to log into his online banking account. And a 6-digit one-time password will be sent to him for verification. As you can see, the system immediately brings John to a screen whereby he can create his own goals. For this instance, he wants to create a goal for a down payment for his mortgage financing. He selected house as his goal category and type in down payment for mortgage. And then Sing as his goal name. And has indicated his down payment is required amount is 50,000 as per the system. And he has the flexibility to indicate when he wants to start the savings and when he wants to end. For this instance, John wants to keep this plan for the next 2 years. And he also has the options whether or not he would like to transfer his money from his account on the monthly, quarterly, daily, or weekly basis. For this journey, John selected monthly. And he wanted the transfer of the money to be happening on every first day of the month. Automatically, if you can see, 2,000 has been calculated, and this will be the amount that will be transferred to his savings account. Lastly, he is also able to set up an alert for his goal. He wants the system to alert him once his goal reaches 80%, and an SMS will be sent to him. John verifies the information, and the system also provides John the standing order transfer plan, how much will be transferred on the monthly basis for the next 2 years. Once John is happy with the information, he confirms his goal, and his goal plan is now created. Now, let us continue with John going through the financing journey. John decided to find out more about his mortgage financing using the mobile application. Upon logging into the application, the system provided John with 3 different ways to communicate with the bank. This is with his reference of his interest on the mortgage offer earlier. Some of these options are, he has the ability to chat via the mobile application, to directly call the bank advisor, or he can visit to the nearest branch. John thought about it. He decided at the end to chat over the mobile application, and instantly the chatbot screens open up in front of him. The chatbot started to communicate with John and asked him if he is currently working in future tech. Apparently, John has moved to another company, so he responded no. The chatbot continued to ask more information about John's new employment, whether to provide his employer name and also his current role. So John continues to fill in like so. The chatbot continued to ask John to confirm if his salary still remains as $3,500, but John replies no, because his salary is now $5,000 US. Immediately, the chatbot brings up a window to inform John that he is eligible to borrow up to $250K for his mobile mortgage loan. And he would like to ask John whether he's interested to discuss further in details of the offer with a service sales advisors. John is interested, and hence he pressed yes. John now has options whether to have a sales advisor to visit him, or he can visit the nearest branch, or through online. He chose branch, and the chatbot instantly shows John the list of preferred branches that is within his vicinity. He selected KLCC and continued to choose a date for the appointment and also the time. In addition to that, there are 3 sales advisors available as per John's appointment. And chatbot asked John to select which sales advisor that he would like to meet up with. John proceeded with Ben. Lastly, the chatbot asked John to confirm his email address so that he can send all the appointment details to John. And John proceeded and clicked yes. That is the correct email address. John looks at the details of the appointment and also the branch that he has selected. Once he's happy with it and verified, he clicked book now. The chatbot confirmed the appointment and shared a map to John on the direction to KLCC branch, and this completes John's appointment. What we experienced just now was that this mobile application gave John sufficient ease of use on an interest offer and how easily he uses the chatbot to fix an appointment with the bank. And on top of that, the ability to update John's latest information during the same conversation. Later in that day, John is at home relaxing, and he accesses his iPad to make sure that the recent fund transfer that he initiated to one of his friends has actually taken place. He logs into his account using the bank application on his iPad. Once logged in, he is presented with the dashboard. Besides showing his current assets and liabilities, he also gets to see different types of marketing offers made available to him. The system also shows John's his pending mortgage application that he created earlier. John clicks on the mortgage application to review all his information and details and provide any missing information before he goes for his meeting at the branch with Ben. He checked his personal information, the nature of his employment, the down payment of the mortgage, the tenure, and the rest of the information. Once he confirms all the relevant information, the solution leads him to a stage where he has to provide some valid documents. John now realized that he does not have his salary certificate in front of him right now. So he decided at this point he would save this current application and use his mobile phone to continue applying for the mortgage when he goes to the office the next day, once he has his salary certificate in front of him. He proceeds with clicking on the Save for Later function. Come the next day, John is in his office. He has his salary slips on hand and is ready to upload the particular document using the banking app. He brings up the details of the mortgage application and click on the option to upload some of the pending documents earlier using the camera function. Like so. He captured a photo of his salary certificate and uploads it into the mobile application. When he continues, he is presented with the application form that requires his signature. Once again, he reviews and then proceed to sign the document using the document's DocuSign capability on his mobile phone and completes the submission. The system then informed John on his successful application and provide an application reference number for his record purposes. So what we experienced just now was enabling John to start his journey from a chatbot and continue his application on an iPad and completes it using his mobile phone. While John continues to browse the mobile banking application, he saw an alert reminder that his car insurance policy renewal is due soon. He needs to renew it immediately, and hence he continued the process. He checks and verifies the start date of his policy, and also the system provides the information of his current existing plan that he has purchased last year, along with his policy information details on the car as well, such as the chassis number, the plate number, and the premium that he paid last year. On top of that, the system provides John the ability to change the sum insured if he desired, using either the slider or key in directly onto the text box itself. John's remains the sum insured as 8,000, but however, he would like to add windscreen damage on top of his coverage. He then continues the process. As part of the requirements for insurance renewal, John requires to upload the car registration document. Again, he uses the camera functions to take a photo of his car registration and then uploads into the mobile application system. He then continues. John verified the information once again. As you can see, there is an offer of 10% discount when John uses the mobile application. Once all the information is verified and correct, John proceeded with the payment for the car insurance. He can either pay with his banking account or with his credit card. He chooses his banking account for this transaction. He proceeded with the payment. And this completes his car insurance renewal, and he has the options to either view the policy on the mobile application, download the policy, and also ability to download the receipt itself. So that completes our 5 onboarding journeys that we have lined up for you, and we hope it provides you some insights on our very channel capabilities. We have seen the use of channels across different touch points on mobile application, on tablets, chatbots, the use of augmented reality. All these channels work together in a seamless user experience, with providing your customer a better and a richer journey experience.
So thank you very much, Christophe and Taylor, for your presentations. I would like to open the floor for questions and would like to invite the presenters to open their camera as well. So let me have a look at the questions we have here. And I have a first one for Christophe. Where someone asks, as a bank using the super app functionality model, usually what should be the segments we focus on first? So what should be our key priorities?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So yeah, it's an interesting question, because the ideal is to have a balanced portfolio of functionality. However, it's difficult to achieve from day one, so to speak. So there's a need to start to look at actually where the customer's priorities are as a whole, if you're trying to define such priorities. And actually, we did some customer surveys of the customers of the banks, of the financial service providers, and to understand their own priorities. It was quite interesting because, of course, we didn't do it every single market. We did it in 10 markets. But it clearly shown that right now there's a strong interest into functionality aligned to the management of credentials. So the ability to help customers better secure their data, define who can access or not their data. So kind of data consent management is becoming something quite strategic, we should say. So that's one image. So on the top right, if you remember the model, those credentials are very important. We also seen customers being very interested to actually ask their own providers to make some of their security details more visible to them. So as banks, as payment providers, you already have a lot of risk management capability, credit risk and so on, and security risk management capabilities. And customers ask, can you make those more visible to us so we understand the risk we're exposed to? So there's a lot of things you can do today that doesn't require to get that complex journey on board. The other part, I think, to answer that question, and I will answer that one, it's clear the funding part is becoming more urgent. We saw that example with Pinduoduo and that ability to support like group purchases. We've seen a pretty strong growth in terms of buy now, pay later type of functionality by competitors to banks, and banks also starting to provide such functionality. So being able to support more flexible funding lending terms on behalf of your customers is clearly becoming more urgent. That doesn't mean only lending to them, but also means helping them to maximize the existing purchasing power. So all those rewards they have, how can you actually help them to reuse the rewards to make them more fungible, more exchangeable, to actually support the funding of transactions? So those were some, I would say, like key priorities today. But ideally, you should get a more balanced portfolio of functionality.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question for you, so I'll proceed with that one. In terms of digital giants, can you comment a bit more on the impact of social messaging apps, especially from the context capture perspective?
Okay, so yeah, so that's an important one, because Clearly, we've seen like a strong interest by WhatsApp in the region. I mean, WhatsApp Pay entered the Indian market. Clearly, WeChat Pay has been quite successful, their model. And part of the drivers that we described was very much the ability to connect to the specific context of the end users, the customers itself. So this ability to actually be part of very specific conversation the customers were having with their friends. So group purchase was a perfect example. It's something you do with your friends. And that's what social messaging apps are well aligned to that. But there's another element to this, which is very important to consider when answering that question. It's related to how social messaging apps are supporting small, medium businesses, micro merchants. If we look at how WeChat Pay has evolved, one of the reasons of their success is all those micro services they provide to small, medium businesses to support online ordering, marketing, inventory, all those functionality which surround the payments and financing like domain. So when you look at social messaging app and what's been very good at from a perspective of creating super app, it's not only the consumer angle, it's very much the micro merchant SMBs and all those peripheral services which have been very good at helping the merchant, the SMB owner, to recreate their own commercial value chain and align it to payment and financial services. And that's also part of that contextual discussion we're having.
Thank you very much. One for Very Park, Syed, maybe, since we haven't heard you yet. Someone asked if our solution supports cloud deployments.
Very interesting question, actually. Yeah. So the Very Park product that we have just showcased, the omnichannel solution, it does support the cloud deployment as well as the on-prem deployment, and we have had experiences of both in the past.
Yes, and a second one is how can a bank build new transactions? Yeah.
I'd be assuming that this is coming from somewhere from the technical parts, but this is an interesting question. Like the topic of self-sufficiency when we are talking about the super apps or the channels being provided to the customers. So as a part of the solution, we also enable a drag and drop designer capabilities. So for example, going forward, you realize that you want to alter the transactions flow. You want to alter the labels that are available on the front end transactions. You want to make it more interesting to mobile banking customers. So all these controls, all these abilities are managed from the drag and drop designer, and we come up with the idea like we didn't come like actually we tried to promote the idea of low code no code development. So we try to enable the banks to be self-sufficient so that they don't have to be coming back to the vendors in order to figure out whenever a new transaction is to be built. So all these capabilities of building own transactions, managing the labels, managing the front ends are provided to the banks, and they are enabled within the solution itself.
Yes, and so this drag and drop allows to build it once and then deploy it to the channel that you want at that time, and you don't have to do everything at the same time, I believe.
Exactly right, Catherine.
Okay, so that I'm just checking a last time. No, there are no more questions. So I would like to thank all our speakers, of course, for presenting, the audience for being there. We are really looking forward to engage with everyone on a one-on-one basis, so don't hesitate to reach out to us to have a conversation, a meeting, a personalized demo, to answer your questions, whatever you want to. So you see the email address here on the screen. We will get back to you as soon as we receive your message. If you want to keep posted about our upcoming events, follow us on LinkedIn. You will be notified of everything we do, of all the new content we present. Don't forget to download the ebook here in the handouts. And with that, I would like to thank you once again, and a very nice evening or afternoon for you all. Thank you very much.